I find the employee resource groups to be a fantastic place to get that knowledge that you may not be able to develop in your own careers or on your own time.
Welcome to the Joy-Powered Workspace podcast, where we help HR and business leaders embrace joy in the workplace. I'm Susan White, owner of Susan Tinder White Consulting, an HR consulting practice. Joining me is my co-host and dear friend, JoDee Curtis, owner of Purple Ink, a large-scale HR firm that I'm an executive collaborator with.
Before we get into this episode, we wanted to let you know about something that we're excited about. We're now offering Joy-Powered memberships where you can get fun extras, and you can join at 3 different levels. At our $3 a month level, Joy-Powered Perks, you'll get early access to our regular episodes, our top 3 action items from each episode, and 15% off Joy-Powered books. And when you sign up, we'll send you a free Joy-Powered journal. Joy-Powered Plus is $5 a month, and it gets you all of that, plus the video version of each episode. And at the top level, what we call Joy-Powered Premium, you'll get everything from both of the first tiers and a 15-minute bonus episode that's worth SHRM credit. You can learn more about our memberships and how to join at Patreon, patreon.com/joypowered.
Today, we're going to talk about employee resource groups or business resource groups, or perhaps you know them by affinity groups or even employee networks. We landed on this topic thanks to a listener who requested in August of 2023 that we discuss how to create, engage, and administer DE&I-based employee business resource groups. In an August 30th, 2023 article by Toki Taguri on diverse.com, she noted a McKinsey report that said that 90% of Fortune 500 companies have employee resource groups. Now, what they call themselves really does vary. But JoDee, let's share the percentages of what the different names are that organizations use. Why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so 36% identify as an employee resource group.
32%, so very closely behind that, identify as a business resource group or a BRG.
4%, which I'm surprised this one was so low, identify as affinity groups.
And then another 4% identify as employee networks. The remaining 24% calls themselves something else. So for the purpose of this podcast, we're going to refer to them as ERGs or employee resource groups, since 36% of Fortune 500 companies, that's the moniker that they're using. Pew Research reports that while 26% of workers say there are employee resource groups where they are employed, only 6% of workers say that they're members of such groups. Now, the 10 most common employee resource groups, according to Taguri's article, in order by frequency, are those that focus on
women.
All right. Number 2 is LGBTQIA+.
Number 3, disabilities.
Number 4, veterans.
5 is Black.
Number 6 is Hispanic or Latino.
Number 7, Pan-Asian.
Number 8 is multi-generational.
Number 9, young professionals.
And number 10 is Indigenous Americans. You know, it's interesting, JoDee. I came from a very large financial institution that had, over 250,000 employees. To my recollection, they had all of these groups except for Indigenous Americans. But I've been gone now for 10 years, so I hope by now they do have an ERG with Indigenous Americans. So we want to dig in a little bit further into employee resource groups. So we thought we would talk to somebody very actively involved in his organization's ERG and even more broadly. Our guest today is Andrew Holbrook, who is Chief Accessibility Officer at Wells Fargo. Prior to that, Andrew was a senior vice president and analytics director with a work history in a variety of analytics, planning, and marketing roles. He's also taught at the University of New Orleans and has worked for ABC Television. Andrew holds a master's and a PhD in political science. I had the pleasure of working with Andrew at JP Morgan Chase before he moved to Wells Fargo 11 years ago. Welcome, Andrew. We are so glad that you're here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
So what responsibilities does a chief accessibility officer do, and especially one of the top banks in the U.S.? What kind of things do you do every day, or what do you worry about?
Well, first of all, it's such an honor to be the first chief accessibility officer at Wells Fargo.
Mm.
It is a role that was recently created. It's not common in financial services. It's not like this is the first one, but it's definitely something which it's not universal. However, there are a lot of other organizations, especially in technology, where chief accessibility officers have been there. And so the answer to your question is that, well, we're figuring a lot of this out along the way, but just where we root ourselves is that if you think about the products and services that Wells Fargo is responsible for, my job is to help ensure that we are considering accessibility in the delivery of those products and services wherever we can. And the definitions of what is accessible constantly changing, constantly under revision, and in a global enterprise like Wells Fargo, they differ across states, municipalities, governments have very different guidelines on this, and just trying to find a way to manage to all of that so that we are delivering the most accessible products and services. That's my job.
I couldn't have a better person doing it.
Well, thank you, Susan. And obviously it's a pleasure to reconnect with you, and JoDee, a pleasure to connect with you for the first time. But that was the other reason why I was really looking forward to this conversation, is that Susan gave me an opportunity to reconnect with you.
Thank you.
Nice. And Andrew, what value do you see employee resource groups bringing to any organization and or your current organization as well?
Well, I will say this is that for me personally, having nearly 20 years experience in disability affiliated employee resource networks, I wouldn't be in the job that I have now had I not had that experience.
Mhm.
So Susan and I worked at JP Morgan Chase together, and we were part of accessibility, an employee resource group there. And then when I came to Wells Fargo, it was one of the first things that I did was to get re-involved with the employee resource groups here at Wells Fargo. And I think part of it is that it helps with the acculturation, both if you're new to the organization, but also if you're long tenured into an organization, you may not know that you've got friends all over. And especially in large organizations, large companies like Wells Fargo, it is something where I have relied on ERGs and continue to rely on ERGs to be subject matter experts in things that I couldn't possibly have subject matter expertise in. So I find the employee resource groups to be a fantastic place to get that knowledge that you may not be able to develop in your own careers or on your own time.
Yeah, so true. And for you, it has truly been, I think personally, a wonderful way to spend any extra time or energy or focus. What do you think the benefits to the companies are to support having ERGs?
Well, in the most broad sense, especially for large companies that are doing a lot of work with consumers, ERGs are in some cases some of the best representatives of what consumer thinking is, because they may have geographic dispersedness, they may have generational differences. They bring all of the great things about the communities in which they live and operate into the workplace, if you will. And so I look at ERGs as sort of being captured market research within a company. And there are examples where I have become informed about things that I had no idea about. And that has informed how do we create products? How do we make sure that what we're delivering in our branches reflect not just sort of a global view, but also the community view? And so I think ERGs are really good at connecting the head and the feet, as I like to call it, of the corporate body.
Yeah, love it. And what advice do you have for people who are considering starting up an ERG? Where would you tell them to start?
Well, first of all, do it. Uh, Second of all, in many companies, there will be existing volunteer networks, whether it be a formal organization or maybe just a handful of people that might be affiliated with a local organization. In my experience, in working with ERGs, a lot of it starts local and and then becomes global. And so I've found in my nearly 20 years of ERG work that partnering with local volunteer organizations, for instance, uh, I know this is a podcast, but behind me, if the video we're showing, there's a Special Olympics football behind me. Special Olympics has a lot of affiliates across the globe. And invariably, whenever I've been involved with an ERG, there was some local affiliation with either a state chapter or a local organization, local games going on. And it turned into, well, you get a handful of people showing up to an event, and then next thing you know, you've got an army of like-minded people working towards, a common goal. So that's what I would suggest.
Love it.
So, the business leaders who are listening to us today and the HR professionals, what advice do you have on should they be engaging with the ERGs once they have them up? Any administrative tips, any advice you'd have to make sure that the members are feeling supported and that it's really thriving?
Oh, goodness gracious. That's a tougher question for me to answer because, I think what I have observed working for me is that the fun thing about ERGs is that they're representative of a lot of different viewpoints. The challenging thing is that they're representative of a lot of different viewpoints. And
Yes.
so, in order to help address those two things, adding structure, providing some routines and some governance, my best experiences are when my HR professionals and partners were helping, if you will, create safe spaces for these communications to happen, but also making them also governed spaces. Because the last thing that any company wants is for an ERG to start making statements, publicly presenting themselves as something that may not necessarily align with the goals of the company. And one of the most effective ways of doing that is like, I always work with my HR partners to say, what can we do better? What are we missing, either from a structure perspective or even just from a governance perspective? And so I considered my HR business partners to be, in essence, the first phone call, the first email, the first chat, when I was, in a leadership role within the ERGs. And I'll say in my current role, I stay very close to my HR partners, and I would just encourage anybody in ERG, whether you're forming a new one or trying to extend its, purview, please stay in alignment and leverage the structures that exist within the HR confines.
So make your HRBP your BFF.
I could not have said it better.
I think it's good advice.
And you just alluded to one, but over your years, what concerns or problems have you seen or maybe even just heard of connected to ERGs?
Though the one that I will say was challenging for me specifically. So for a while, I was our membership and chapter development chair for Wells Fargo's Disability Connection, which meant that at the time there were 25 affiliates across the country and globally that all needed to be managed, if you will. Resources needed to be provided, et cetera. And in some cases, there was great local connectivity. In some cases, there wasn't. What I will say is that each one of those 25 was special, and each one of those 25 knew that they were special. And they most definitely, worked together, but sometimes they were focused on completely different objectives. So I like to say that disability is one of the most diverse of diverse segments.
Mhm.
And that would get represented within those different ERG locations. So one of the challenges is trying to sing with one voice or try to represent one perspective, boil it down into something so that everybody could feel like they were part of the same structure, the same journey, the same mission, while also being authentic to the local and or different local perspectives or just different perspectives. So
Right.
I hope that addresses the question, but I could go into like specific examples where I have seen it work well, I've seen it work not so well, but by and large, I find that the ERGs, there's a lot of grace that's given
Mhm.
to one another. And
Mhm.
so when it doesn't work well, guess what? You've got friends that are willing to give you a pass on this one.
Mhm.
So that's been my experience at least.
That's
Good.
great. My experience as well. So, Andrew, are there any external resources that you're aware of that you would point HR and business leaders toward as they map out their own ERG strategies?
I I would, and I will say that my experience is largely limited to disability focused ERGs. So I know Disability In is a great resource, including they do have an ERG roundtable that they have not
I didn't realize that.
infrequently. Yes.
Great.
And so I've been a party to those, and there will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 500 like-minded business professionals where different ERGs are sharing best practices, other challenges. It's once every quarter for about an hour, those groups will get together. But even that, it's again to my earlier point of staying connected, knowing that it's not just you within the four walls of your particular organization, but knowing that there are similar experiences being had by millions of business professionals. I really loved leveraging Disability In for that.
Thank you for that.
Well, Andrew, I asked you about the concerns or the problems around them. So now I'll flip my game here. Can you share some success stories that you've seen or been a part of over the years?
I mean, I'm going to be a little humble, if you will, which is not easy for me, as Susan will tell you. Let's just say that it's unequivocally, I would not be Chief Accessibility Officer at Wells Fargo were it not for ERGs. The skills that I developed as part of it is something that I've witnessed others developing as well. And that some of my favorite examples of this, and it's been multiple examples, it was both at JP Morgan Chase and here, is that when organizations connect the ERGs to their senior leadership, whether it be the CEO or other C-suite individuals, it's a challenging thing because it's rarefied air at the top of the house. And if you can learn how to breathe in that space and connect that to what's going on within the day-to-day experiences of employees, it's just magical. And I know I had the great opportunity to do that here at Wells Fargo, multiple occasions. And I'll just say that when I got here in 2013, the number of employees that identified as being a person with a disability was less than 1/2 of 1%.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Now,
And
11
we,
years later,
yes.
in our most recent DE&I report, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion report last year, we were well above 8%.
Well done. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot more people than that have some type of a disability, but they were being very, very quiet before they felt safe enough. Thank you, Andrew, to come out and self identify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is huge. It's interesting. So when I was at JP Morgan Chase and Andrew and I worked together on the accessibility business resource group, Scott Powell was the first executive sponsor that we had. And he's now the chief operating officer, I think, at Wells Fargo. But
That's correct.
you are so right to learn how to deal with somebody that was breathing that air and asking questions that were, C-suite level type of questions, it does raise our game. So a business resource group can be a great developer of employees.
Yeah. And let's just say that my prior relationship with Scott Powell was very helpful because he was the executive co-sponsor of
Terrific.
Disability Connection when I was its enterprise president, along with Saul Van Beurden, who is our head of consumers, small and business banking group. And between those two being stewards of this, but also being stewards of the success of our membership,
Yes.
myself included, I think it is important to recognize that most people, even in that rarefied air, they're people.
Mm-hmm. And they have a
And
passion for these things, right?
exactly. And the
Mhm.
ERGs are an effective way to sort of allow them to extend that passion into their day-to-day lives as well as to create opportunities for coaching and learning and developing the workforce, if you will. So yeah, uh, I could not speak more highly of employee resource groups.
Yeah, I think that's terrific. Wonderful point. So finally, our last question for you. What brings you the most joy in the work that you do, Andrew?
I will say that working at an organization of Wells Fargo's scale, if I get it right, I don't get it right for just a handful of people. I get it right for thousands, if not millions of people.
Yeah.
And with that, this is a dream come true in that I never would have imagined being able to have that sort of impact. And so to be in this space, it's both humbling, but also just incredibly rewarding. And it brings me a lot of joy.
Well, you have brought us joy today. So thank you for joining us. We really, really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And I'm so glad to be a part of this. Thank you.
All right, folks, a quick breather here. You know, over the years, leading HR initiatives at companies, I've come to a profound realization. Certain tools can truly be a game changer. That's why I'm excited to talk about Cocoon, the leave management software that's making waves in the industry. I've heard wonderful things about how Cocoon not only simplifies the entire leave process, but also keeps administrative costs low. Their automation handles the most complex parts of leave, from compliance and claims to payroll, saving your team countless hours and headaches about leave. Managing leaves, especially in states with complicated programs, is confusing, not only for you, but for the employees as well. They look to you to help them navigate them. Clients and their finance teams rave about the cost savings they've seen by taking advantage of state and disability benefits for their employees. Plus, Cocoon integrates seamlessly with top HR systems like Workday and ADP, ensuring a smooth process from start to finish. Head to cocoon.com/HR and see the value for you and your employees. New customers who mention this podcast are eligible for a 50% implementation fee discount. All right, back to the show. Susan, we have a listener question today where they ask, do you think it is appropriate for HR professionals to have unprofessional social media in their personal lives?
I think unprofessional is in the eye of the beholder. So I'm really not very comfortable judging what I think is professional and not, especially in one's personal life. However, I do have to ask why anyone, especially in an HR profession, who actually is working in a fishbowl of a workplace, would want to have anything out there in the digital universe that may be of interest in a good way or a bad way to the team members that they work with. Personally, I'm not in favor of doing that. I try to keep a low profile on social media. And what I do post, I think about before I hit that post button, well, could this ever come back to haunt me in some way? Now, I probably have made some mistakes in the past, but I'm pretty frugal about what I'll put out there. And I do encourage listeners who are HR professionals to realize that once you put it out there in that digital universe, it's out there forever.
I agree. I do post more than you do, but typically only things that I want to see other people post, right? My kid,
Sure.
my grandson, I don't get into politics. I don't, um, you know, I don't think I do anything unprofessional, but happy to get some feedback on that if someone thinks it is. But
I follow you, JoDee, and I enjoy following you and where you travel and your family. So I'm good with yours.
yeah, thank you.
All right, it's time for In the News. I learned a new term for an age-old practice. It's called dry promotions. In an HR Morning article dated May 7th, 2024, by Michelle McGovern entitled Dry Promotions, the Pros, the Cons, and 5 Ways to Handle Them, McGovern reports there is a rising trend in giving promotions without pay raises. I was thinking when I saw the article, it's like a dry promotion might be when you are celebrating your rise in level and doing it without alcohol. That's what I thought, but that is not what the dry promotions were about. It's about getting that next level job and not getting any money associated with it. So I've seen where when organizations are in an early stage of development or going through a down period, or when the economy is challenging, I've seen organizations offer higher level roles with the promise that when things are better, the individual will get their reward. Or they'll routinely ask employees to trust them, that they will do right by them when they can. Or even if more money is not ever going to be on the table for taking on more responsibilities, some employees are happy with a new job title, officer title, if your industry does that, or other perks that come with the higher level job, perhaps more vacation eligibility, paid parking, or some other type of perk.
Mhm.
A couple of the pros of doing dry promotions for employees who accept them are that they are learning new skills, and they are widening their internal and maybe even their external network, positioning themselves perhaps better for the future. Cons are really easy to figure out. Employees may grow to resent doing higher level work for no higher pay and may take the new skills and experience that they gain from doing it and use it to get a better role outside of the organization.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there are definitely pros and cons. So, listeners, if you are thinking about or have done or in the middle of doing dry promotions, here's some advice that McGovern gives for you to think about.
Number one, be transparent. We got to be honest with people and maybe tell them why this is happening. Why are they getting a promotion without an increase in salary?
Yeah, just tell them the truth. Number 2, offer something else that you can as a reward. And maybe it means you give them an extra week's vacation. Maybe if you don't really have any cash that you can give, maybe it is the parking spot next to the door. I don't know, but try to give them something to recognize that they are taking on more.
Yeah. Number 3, show a path to getting increased money at some point, right? So maybe we can't today for whatever reason, but your bonus opportunity is more significant, or we have a plan in place to give raises as of a certain day, or, again, being honest and transparent about what could happen.
Yeah. So number 4 is offer more of what they want. So instead of trying so hard to figure out what more could I give them, ask them, what is it? I'm asking you to take on more and I don't have money to give you. What would make your life better? And maybe that's more flexibility in where, how, and when they work. Who knows? But ask the question.
Yeah. And then number 5, double down on the praise, right? Explain to them, why are they getting the promotion? How have they earned it? What events, what relationships, what skills do they have that got them to this promotion? So,
That's right. Acknowledge it. Yeah, I love that. So
yeah.
JoDee, have you ever taken a dry promotion?
I not only have never taken one, I also had never heard of them either. I will say that I recently offered someone, I didn't not offer them a raise, but I did offer them um, benefits in return for a partial raise. And I just put it in their plate to say, I'll give you some options here and what's more important to you. So,
Oh, I love that. So I love when employees get to make the decision and drive, what the result is. I know that their skin is in the game more. So that's very cool. I think back about my time at a very large corporation. There, we did go through tough times, and we did go through reorganizations and different things where I did need to take on more responsibility for no money. And honestly, I heard a lot of, trust me, well, when we can, things will get better. And you know what? They always did. So
yeah.
It was not unusual to take on more in the hopes or the expectations that at some point things would level out, rewards would come, and they always did. So if you trust your manager or your leader or whoever it is, it goes a long way with me. So good luck to those of you who get offered dry promotions. Think about the pros and the cons and do what's right for you.
Yeah. Thanks for listening today. Please tune in next time and make it a joy-powered day.
Thank you. If you would like SHRM recertification credit for listening to this podcast, please visit getjoypowered.com/SHRM. You'll find an evaluation of the podcast, and once you complete the evaluation, you will see the SHRM recertification credit code and a link to a proof of participation certificate. Again, that's getjoypowered.com/SHRM. Thank you for listening, and thanks for your dedication to the HR profession. If you like the show, please tell a few friends about us and let us know what you thought by leaving us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening right now. Become a Joy-Powered member to get extras like early access to episodes, video versions of the episodes, bonus episodes, and even more. Learn more at patreon.com/joypowered. You spell Patreon, Patreon. So it's patreon.com/joypowered. You can find more information on our podcast, books, blogs, and more at getjoypowered.com. We're at JoyPowered on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you can email us via joypowered@gmail.com. Make it a joy-powered day.